I've just come up from the Metro A. I'm right next to the Vatican, and I've come to meet Gareth, who is an English guy, been living in Italy quite a long time, and he is actually a financial expert. Let's go meet him. Castroni is where the expats go to buy their home comforts. So hello Gareth, and
Hi.
Thanks for agreeing for me to interview you and
No
have a
problem.
chat.
Yeah.
Just tell me about yourself. How did you end up in Rome, of all places?
How did I end up in Rome? Well, I think probably like a lot of people, I literally got a work offer for 3 to 6 months to give it a trial. I was working for HSBC Bank in the UK. I was a financial planner there. And I was approached by an independent financial company in the UK who were opening up an office in Rome in 2004. And I said, well, give it a go. I'd really wanted to move abroad. I didn't want to stay in the UK anymore.
What didn't you like about England in particular?
I probably have to wind back just a little bit on this.
Okay.
But so basically when I was 24, 25, I got approached by 2 friends who said, do you want to go and travel the world? You have to bear in mind that I, at this time, was 24 years. I'd been on one holiday abroad for 2 weeks to Portugal in my whole life at that point. Most of them had been in Cornwall in southern England, even in summer. And so I went away. We travelled through Southeast Asia. We ended up in Australia. We stayed there for quite some time, travelled there, and then came back through the South Pacific. The thing that I obviously suddenly discovered was the sun. And I arrived back in England and I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Northern England, Huddersfield, a bit kind of rainy and grey most of the time. And I just thought, I'm not sure I want to be here anymore. And so I was looking for something to go away, and it was total fluke. I gave myself a 5-year time horizon. And I literally, on July was the time, and in April I just got approached just because of some network contacts I got. And I went, yeah, okay, where? Italy. Never been before. Let's do it.
You weren't prepared in any way, really? No.
Didn't speak the language. I've never been here before. I had no idea of the culture, the nothing, zero. It was literally just thrown right in.
Do you think that's what a lot of British people, what helps them make the choice about moving abroad is the weather? Is that
I would say so.
the primary thing, do you think?
Yeah, I think so for the Brits. Yeah, I mean, in my work, financial planner, I work a lot with English-speaking foreigners who live in Italy. They're not just Brits. I work with Americans, Canadians, lots of people. I would say the majority. Yeah, I think the weather's one point, but I think also the people I'm working with are sort of pre-retirement, post-retirement, and I think they come over because they want the lifestyle as well. They want that rural sort of Umbria, Tuscany lifestyle, which, they've got the olive groves or whatever, and they want to just enjoy
their Italian dream.
Their Italian dream, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not always an Italian dream, I have to be honest. But, I think that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's what we're finding out. So just taking a step back, you said you didn't speak the language.
Yeah.
So how was that? How was that?
I have to make a confession. I can't believe I'm doing this on tape there. For 5 years, I never made an effort. My wife's Italian, so I didn't make any effort. She did all the sort of important stuff, and I was really lazy. I took lessons, but my last experience was going to Dante Alighieri School in Rome, and there were 12 of us in a class. One was Russian, one was English me, and the other 10 was Spanish. So you can imagine what that went like, and I just abandoned it because it was just going way too quick for me to understand. And it wasn't until my son was born, and I thought, look, I can't have an Italian school ringing me saying he's ill, you need to come and get him or whatever, and me not being able to communicate with him. So I guess I just threw myself into it. And I think that would be my advice to everybody, if you're watching this, is just... I think British particularly, we have that kind of fear factor of making a mistake. We don't want to look, idiots when we're talking. And I just overcame that. I mean, I had an incentive to do it because I had a small child at the time. But I just I just literally threw myself in. I thought, oh, I'll make mistakes. What the hell? Yeah.
So you're married to an Italian?
Yeah.
Okay, but you didn't meet her straight away. You
No, I
came
did.
here.
I did.
Oh, you did. Oh, gosh.
Within a month.
Oh gosh, that was good. Good luck. And do you find that helped you in some way actually settle here with regards to bureaucracy?
Having my wife Italian.
Yeah.
Well, from a bureaucracy point of view, absolutely. Because you've got somebody who obviously understands the culture, understands how to deal with people, and obviously speaks a very high technical language that can get things done. I think that was the main thing. Even socializing. I mean, I didn't really socialize around Italians, and I have to say, when I really decided to learn the language and I threw myself into it, my life became so much better. I mean, like, my friendships blossomed. I've now probably got more Italian friends than international friends. I can ring up and change a contract for the internet system at home. I can go to the comune and talk to them about doing something official. It does help right at the start, I think, to have somebody who can help you out. Definitely, whether that's a local or foreigner who's been here a long time, to get around the bureaucracy. At the start, I think it's almost needed, really.
Okay. Yeah. So your major piece of advice would be to get the language first.
If you don't obviously have an Italian in the family or whatever, then it's going to be more difficult. But there's always people who can help out. I mean, I think of a couple of clients who moved, speak absolutely pidgin Italian, but locally there was a lady from Holland who lived here many, many years, and she was providing services to people like them. So she was well known in the local comune, and she was helping them go down there and get documents and communicating with people. So I think there are people there, but if you want to do everything yourself, you're going to have to learn something before you come, for sure.
What would you do differently if you were to go back in a practical sense?
Yeah.
What would you think is really fundamental to do in preparation? Do you believe that you can just come on a whim and you do have a chance of it working out?
That's a really good question. What would I change? I think fundamentally the language I would change. I would have done some language preparation for sure. Everything else, I think it would be. I don't think you could ever tell anybody that they can come and prepare for Italian bureaucracy because it's so crazy.
They don't know what they let themselves in for.
You've got to be here to experience it, and the only way you can live it is just go through it. I mean, it's not. I don't really think you can prepare yourself much other than the sort of language side of things, and I think also the language side of things helps you with local people as well, because. My experience, and I know a lot of other people would say that, Italians are very welcoming and helpful, and they're not going to look down your nose at you because you speak badly. They're kind of interested in general about having you around, but of course you've got to be able to communicate at least something with them. So.
What do you actually do here now in Italy? What's your profession? You're still in banking, you're still in finance?
Yeah, so I work for a company called the Spectrum IFA Group. That is let's call it pan-European, I think is a great term, financial planning group. So when somebody's either living here or is moving to Italy, what they'll do is contact me, and what we do is we look at a full financial planning exercise to see how tax efficient their financial affairs that they currently have are going to be when they move to Italy. Primary thing. And then what we'll do is look at restructuring things if needed, because I think that the sort of common misconception is, I'm going to move from America, I can move from the UK, I've got my financial affairs all sorted out, and then I'm going to move to Italy and it's just going to be easy. I'll declare what I've got and that's it. But there's so many sort of idiosyncrasies between the two systems. This doesn't work like it does there, or this is not respected by the Italian authorities because they don't have that kind of product, but it is in another country. And so my job is to look at what people have and then transpose that into an Italian context, and if necessary we'll restructure things for them to make sure that they're the most tax efficient and they've got the most simplistic, I guess, affairs from an Italian tax point of view. So that's primarily what I do for people.
So what's a common thing that keeps cropping up with your clients? For example, do they come up against problems of how to declare their taxes? Do they think that they can keep things separately?
Yeah.
What happens? Say somebody moves from America,
Yeah.
and they own a house there and they're renting it out because
Yeah.
they want the income, passive income, to move here.
Yeah.
Are they allowed to keep that separate?
Yeah.
Or do the Italians tax them on that income?
So Italy has, in exactly the same way as America, exactly the same way as the UK, exactly the same way as somewhere like Australia, Canada, South Africa, almost every nation in the world has this thing of worldwide taxation. So they're looking at everything that you own all over the world. It doesn't matter where it is. And they're saying, we want to know everything because there may be some tax applied to that, of which you will need to pay to the Italian tax authorities. So using your example of a property, for example, yeah, it does need to be declared. It's passive income, and passive income is taxable in Italy, whether it's generated in Italy or whether it's generated in another country. So what we can do is we can talk to clients, work out what's the best way to manage that income stream so that when it goes into an Italian tax return, you're not going to get either have any surprises, which is the big one, and secondly, it's kind of taxed the least possible. And that's exactly what I do. So I do that with property, I'm doing that with pensions, I'm doing that with investment portfolios. I'm just trying to find out the best ways to deal with things, really.
So if they were to be naive, would that mean they would get taxed already in America, come here, be liable for tax, not pay the tax, and then get huge fines? Or, yeah, I don't know, is paying tax in America on that income not sufficient, therefore?
America's a particularly an interesting one, actually, because no matter where an American goes in the world, they still have to declare and pay taxes in the United States. I think there's only 2 countries in the world. The other one is Eritrea. Okay, so it gives you an idea. So it doesn't, America, it's a very particular and more difficult situation, and they probably actually have the more complex financial planning needs, of which I help them to work the way around when they want to move to somewhere like Italy. For other countries, so take Canadians or Brits, once they transfer their residency over, then their taxable position becomes Italy only. They don't have any liabilities back in the UK, unless they have a property, but that's another story.
Tax is one thing. What about pensions?
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking to Damien because he knows everything about visas and that type of thing. And the amount of visas that are given out are very few and far between, and you are better off if you do have a passive income. Yeah,
I think the number one rule is, and I said this to people all the time, is don't expect it all to work in Italy like it's worked for you in your other country. Okay, that's kind of number one rule, really. It's just, you need to plan it. It's ideal if you plan it before you come. Of course, most people, first thing they do is they buy the house, they've got the olive groves, they can't wait to move here, they move here, they get into the system, and then suddenly they wake up one morning and go, hang on a minute, maybe we need to be paying some taxes, or you know, I don't understand how my financial affairs are dealt with in Italy. And that's when they contact me often, and you have to go through a process. The sort of sweet spot for this financial planning is that sort of transitionary year between the years that you're in your other country and the year that you move to Italy. And that sort of sweet spot is that year in which you're moving. And we can maybe utilize tax benefits in one country and tax benefits in Italy as well. If you pre-plan, of course, we can pre-plan to maximize whatever beforehand, and then you run into Italy. And, you know, my job, I essentially try to do 3 things, okay? Because this is my experience of financial matters in Italy. Because you just, you know, the Agenzia delle Entrate, they're a nightmare. And, you know, you can just get random letters and you have no idea what they're talking about or where they've got the information from. So you want to avoid that as much as you can. So I do 3 things for my clients. So first of all, where possible, we consolidate. So quite often abroad, you'll have lots of different accounts all over the place, and it may work for you there. It's going to be complicated. So we want to consolidate. Second thing is we want to simplify. So we want to simplify the accounts that you've got, who's dealing with the accounts or managing them, and just make things easy for the Italian authorities to understand. And the third thing is get the tax efficiency right as well. So use the right products for being in Italy and not necessarily for another country around the world. If you apply those basic 3 rules to it, I mean, it is complicated underneath because you got to, you know, my job is looking at cross-border financial planning. not just looking at in Italy, I'm looking at cross borders. So I have to take account of what's happening in your home country and what's happening in Italy as well. And then it's like putting a jigsaw together with wrong pieces at times, or using a best fit solution.
And every case, I presume, is completely different, because obviously everybody is in a different position. So I noticed lots of people have this dream of retiring to Italy because they've been slugging their guts out under the rain, sorry, and they think they're going to come to Italy. I say this quite often. They think everything is the same as back home, but you just get the sunshine and cheap wine. So people that want to retire, is that, let's talk about the English. There might be English people that want to come and retire here. They're no longer part of Europe. Is that feasible? Can they earn their pension, have it transferred here? Is it viable? I mean, do they lose out lots of money by doing that? Are they going to lose income by having their pension transferred? How does that work?
So in terms about pension transferring, in most cases, we would never transfer. It would be almost impossible, actually, to transfer a pension into Italy. This comes down to one of the points that I was saying before, which is you're kind of comparing an apple with a pear, or an apple and a banana would probably be a better explanation, is that the two, and a pension in Italy is just fundamentally different to a pension in the UK or in the USA. And you can't move one to another. So we have to retain it, but we have to sort of look at what are the characteristics and how can we make that work better for our life in Italy. In terms of retiring in Italy, I think most of my clients actually are moving up towards retirement or post-retirement. I think it's a great life for them, where they go back to the general rules, which are consolidating things, simplifying it, and being tax efficient. I think it's a pretty decent life for them, if I'm honest. But those who don't plan enough, I think they find it complicated. And also, actually, probably important to say that they often get bad advice. So, like commercialisti, so accountants in Italy, there are some really good ones around who really know their stuff. But your kind of local guy in Abruzzo who's been dealing with, farmers in agricultural land in that area. The classic one I hear all the time is, oh, don't bother declaring that because the Italians don't want to know about it. And I'm like, that's just shocking advice. They want to know about everything. This idea, I guess, in sort of 1980s, oh, don't bother telling the Italians about that. They'll never find out about it. They're hopeless at looking at things. They're crazily good, actually, at tracking things down now. And so I don't advocate any of that approach at all. But of course, if you're putting your trust in a commercialista and he's giving you information, a professional, you kind of assume that maybe it's true. But in a lot of cases, if somebody says don't declare anything, I just say to them, just kind of politely walk out the door and find yourself another professional, or come and talk to me and I'll give you the advice.
So you are actually somebody that could substitute that figure. You are somebody that people could talk to instead of their local Italian accountant. You're the expert.
Well, I'm not a commercialista, I'm a financial planner. So if you go to commercialista, they're going to say, give me your financial information and I'll declare it, and then you'll get your tax bill. My job is almost to step in there before that happens and say, let's have a look at what you've got. Can we restructure it? Can we do things better based on Italian legislation so that when you come to making that declaration, it's not going to hit you as hard as it would be doing it the other way?
Okay, so when you say hit hard, can you give us an example? Because I know exactly what you mean by hitting hard. Have you got any examples of when people have been really caught out and got into trouble? I
always find that when people get into trouble in Italy, and make this be a warning, is when they don't declare things that they should have done. Often excluding it because they think they don't need to declare it, or, as I say, commercialista or somebody, other well-meaning person, I guess, has said you don't need to declare it. One of the this goes back to 2014, but I remember 2014, the UK were just like that, sharing a lot of information on people who had UK properties. They were renting them out, and they were legitimately and correctly declaring them in the UK first, because that's what you need to do. and they were sharing that information with the Italian tax authorities because the individual who owned the house was resident in Italy. And once they shared that information in 2014, the Guardia di Finanza were going round and knocking on people's doors and literally going, there you go, we know how much rental income you've earned in the UK, we know how much tax you've paid, we know your property address, and you'll be fined for not having declared it in Italy.
What are the fines like here?
Well, they used to be much steeper. They've kind of, at that time, they were asking for 10% of the property value. So I remember one particular case, a woman had inherited a property from the death of a family member, £400,000, and they asked for 40 grand for it, you know, just for that silly mishap, really. Now it's not as much as that. It's all based on percentages, you know, how many years you've not declared it, percentages, and you know, it's the sort of crazy calculation, which you would need to do with the commercialista.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You're another one of those people who've had the guts to open their own business in Italy. And what do you think about that? Is it, obviously it's not impossible, but
Yeah.
what's your experience? How did you find that?
Opening a business in Italy. Yeah, you know, I think that probably the main thing is the number of surprises that you constantly get from the tax authority, from the Chamber of Commerce, for some random sort of agency contacting you to pay a bill of €300, and you know, it's for, you know, I remember one, I forgot what they called it in Italian, but it was for the storage of paper records. I can't remember what they called it now. It was but anyway, it was for that, and I'm thinking, we're in the digital age. What am I paying storage of digital records for? And yeah, it's that, going back to that thing of bureaucracy, actually, I think, more than anything else. It's that, you know, I think you've just got to accept that Italy's a bureaucratic state, and you know, they have offices for everything. And they've got to keep those people in work, so they're always looking for ways to tax you and do it more. Yeah, it's just, you know, I don't have any hair left, but if I did, I would probably be pulling it out on a frequent basis. Right. You know, I wouldn't want to put people off wanting to try and open a business, because it has got a lot better. I mean, that, you know, we've talked about the partita IVA, which was horrid when I first took one out years ago. You needed like €3,000 to open one or something. Well, maybe not that much, but now you can do it online yourself for sort of like €100. I mean, so from a digital point of view, they've come on a lot with that. But of course, it's then important to make sure that you're always up to date. And
yeah, you were saying about surprises, and I think one thing that I've noticed, I don't know if it's still the same in Britain, but we were so used to being told if we were supposed to do anything in advance. So you would get a letter, oh, you owe such and such amount because this is, you've opened this, so you're going to have to pay X amount. Here, I've always been told that la legge non ammette l'ignoranza. So if there's a law about something, it's up to you to know about it. So you will very rarely get a letter that's informing you about something. It will just be asking and taking from you. You find that as well? Yeah,
all the time. You know, communication is kind of, it's not non-existent, you know. It's not non-existent. I mean, since I started speaking Italian at a much higher level, I now follow a lot of where this information comes from. So the Gazzetta Ufficiale, where all the laws come down from. So I'm always looking for laws that are relevant to me and to my clients, and seeing what the updates are. And then, like, as at the time that we're speaking, you know, there's talk about this legge di bilancio, the budget for next year. And there's a new things coming through which are going to affect probably my clients, and so I think once you've got the language and you know where to look, you can find it. But as a business owner trying to get on, you know, it's my business to look at these things. But you know, I have a client who's an antiques dealer. She's not going to be looking at these things, and so yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, communication. How are you supposed to find out this information? And your commercialista, you can be guaranteed, will never communicate these things with you.
Things change so often as well, don't they?
Yeah.
You think you're in a sweet spot, you've got everything in place, and you can just plod along, and then after a couple of years, somebody says, "Oh, didn't you do that? The expiry date was the 31st of December. Did you do it?" No, I didn't know about it. So that's what I'm trying to get at. You know, you've got to expect to have to be on your toes all the time, looking for things that you should be doing if you're a business owner.
Absolutely. You know, I think as a business owner as well, business landscape in general is just... do you know what it is? I wrote an article about this quite a few years ago, and I said that the business environment in Italy doesn't inspire you to be hugely entrepreneurial and scale your business to another level, because they'll incentivize you at sort of a level of income up to maybe, I don't know, 50,000 euros a year. And then the bureaucracy and the taxes kind of start getting heavier and heavier until you get over sort of, you know, like 250, 300,000 a year, when at that point you can outcompete all that bureaucracy. And so you can run a small business, I think, quite well. And yes, you've always got to be prepared for surprises. You've always got to be prepared for lack of communication. And so it means that you manage a business, I think, more conservatively than you would do if you were in another country where you didn't have all that sort of pressure on you all the time, or worry. And so you can kind of just concentrate on building your business and going for it. Here, you've got to be more conservative at the start. And then when you get to a sort of level where you're like, right, next level, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, how do I get there? Without taking a huge leap, you know, like you can scale your business 4 or 5 times the size in a very short space of time. It's hard to just keep on crawling up, you know, and building a business incrementally over time. So I think it encourages, but it's Italian mentality as well. You know, Italians are more conservative by nature, probably a product of the system. So I think small business people, you know, if you can make it, great. If you wanted to scale it into some sort of global sort of entity, you might struggle.
So what made you choose this actual area of Rome? I mean, you're just literally a stone's throw from St. Peter's Basilica. How cool is that? Do you like this area? You obviously do if you're staying here.
Yeah, look, it's more out of convenience than anything else, because number one, I need to have an office. This is a rented place. So this is an opportunity to have an office in an easily accessible location if I need to see people in the office. Often I travel out, mostly, in fact, I travel out and see people, or do online these days. Everybody seems happy online as well. But, you know, I wanted an office that was convenient to get to. And also it's a lifestyle choice, because we're living in Rome. As anybody who lives in Rome will know, it's a nightmare to get around and do things. So we chose to live more in the centre and have the availability of doing everything. You know, I don't really, unless I'm traveling out to see clients or going somewhere, I don't really need to move the car. You know, I've got the metro, the buses, the trams, the electric bikes and everything. So it's really a convenience kind of thing. Yeah, I personally miss, you know, the countryside. I'm British at the end of the day. It'd be nice to have a bit more greenery and hear the birds tweeting in the morning rather than people shouting at one another. But
you've got time for that though, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
What are your pet peeves about Italy and about Rome?
Pet peeves about Italy and Rome. You know, Italy in general, I don't have much of a problem, apart from what we've talked about already, the bureaucracy and this and that and the other. You know, I said to people, you know, we're going to move here. I just said to them, you know, just treat what extra you might have to pay as like a sunshine tax. And you've got sunshine, you've got countryside and beaches and mountains and food and history and culture and the weather. I mean, comparatively to where I came from, you know, I've got everything really. So Italy in general, I don't have a big problem. I don't have a problem with people where they drive. You get used to it after a while. Rome itself, my biggest peeve, and I'm sorry, but it's probably maybe because I'm British, it's just the way people treat this city. You know, Romans and tourists included. You know, it's like probably one of the most beautiful cities in the world, or certainly unique in itself. and yet, you know, litter everywhere, really not well looked after, and it just shocks me, you know, it shocks me, because I'd really like to see it blossom way more than it is, yet it gets treated really badly, and it saddens me actually, because I really do love it, and I like Romans as well. I know they can be a bit funny if you don't know how they work, you know, but actually once you get to know them, they're good, you know, they're interesting people. So in general, I'm really positive on Italy, I have to be honest. You know, I compare it to where I came from, and whilst the UK is so great in many ways, I have a much better life in Italy, you know, even with the difficulty, everyday difficulties. I've, you know, kind of trying to just get myself in that Italian mentality of, you know, okay,
Yeah,
well,
you've got to have the right frame of mind.
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
You can't change something. It's
No.
a waste of time coming here and think you can change something.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got to
It's just got to let it go, you know, and just get on with it. And it's just another thing. That's the way it is.